All right, so I'm going to move through this pretty quick, just for the sake of time and also for the sake of expediency with uploading. But if you have the book, this is coming from page 102 through like 105, 106. And like I said, it's written by a thinker named Ayn Rand. Again, I've heard it pronounced Ayn Rand, Ayn Rand. And she lived from 1905 through 1982, and she's primarily, well, she's known for a variety of philosophical outlooks, but she wrote a very influential and dense book called Atlas Shrugged. Some of you might be familiar with it, both kind of as a book, and then I think it was made into a movie, at least one movie, maybe more. Okay. Uh, and in this piece, essentially, what Rand is doing is she's pushing back on the notion of altruism, and she actually is making, I think, the provocative claim, to various extents, that actually, like altruism, uh, altruism is and can be dangerous. Okay, and it is and can be dangerous because what it does is it makes us maybe less of, or kind of succumb to, sometimes the values of others that we don't hold. Okay? And this sticks within Rand's larger project of kind of how she viewed the world, and you can kind of do your own looking into of that if you would like. Okay? And so essentially what Rand says and what she does here, and this comes from The Ethics of Emergencies, which again will translate, I think, nicely into our discussion on Wednesday, is essentially she's pushing back against altruism. Okay? And she says that actually it is not a bad thing to act within our own self-interest. Okay? And she says that when we think of, like, those sacrifices we make for others, we really have to evaluate why we're making them and if they are, like, advantageous for us and the overall kind of scheme of our own happiness. Okay? So she says the psychological result of altruism may be observed in the fact that many a great people approach the subject of ethics by asking such questions as, should one risk one's life to help a human who is drowning, trapped in a fire, stepping in front of a speeding truck, or hanging by their fingernails over an abyss? Ay, ay, ay. Okay? If humans accept the ethics of altruism, they suffer the following consequences. Okay? We suffer if we accept if we accept the ethics of altruism. We face the following consequences: a lack of self-esteem, a lack of respect for others, that seems weird, a nightmare view of existence, and in fact, a lethargic indifference to ethics, a hopelessly cynical amorality. Okay? So Rand's out of the gates pretty tenacious about her pushback against altruism. Okay? By elevating the issue of helping others into the central and primary issue of ethics, altruism has destroyed the concept of any authentic benevolence or goodwill among humans. It has indoctrinated humans with the idea that to value another human being is an act of selflessness, thus implying that humans can have no personal interests in others, to value another means to sacrifice oneself. Okay? So again, and Rand is kind of working within this, like, hierarchical approach of saying, why should we kind of like bring ourselves down to others? Okay? And again, kind of like an uncomfy question, but this also is, again, kind of in Rand's overall larger project of thinking about, like, self-mastery and, like, self-assertion, not in the same way that the existentialists did, but there's a little bit of the same feel. And Rand suggests that, like, we shouldn't sacrifice ourselves for others. That we should, again, kind of like have greater intensity and intention with ourselves. And then, sure, we can help others to the extent that we don't bring ourselves down. So she says, sacrifice is the surrender of a greater value for the sake of a lesser one, or non-value. Thus, altruism gauges a man's or woman's virtue by the degree to which he or she surrenders, renounces, or betrays their own values. Okay? Thus, what she advocates for here on page 103 is called the rational principle of conduct. Okay? The rational principle of conduct here. Okay? And she says the following. She says, what we ought to think about is we ought to always act in accordance with the hierarchy of your values and never sacrifice a greater value to a lesser one. Okay? Should never sacrifice a greater value to a lesser one. Okay? This applies to all choices, including one's actions towards other humans. Okay? She talks about love and friendship. Okay? She also makes the claim on 104. She makes the claim on 104 here, right? Concern for welfare of those, of, pardon me, concern for the welfare of those one loves is a rational part of one's selfish interests. So even when we think about why we should help others, we should help others because yes, we also feel good when we help others, right? If a man who is passionately in love with his wife spends a fortune to cure her of a dangerous illness, it would be absurd to claim that he does so as a sacrifice for her sake, not his own. Okay. Yada yada yada. Continuing on. The proper method of judging when or whether one should help another person is by reference to one's own rational self-interests and one's own hierarchy of values. The time, money, and effort one gives or the risk one takes should be proportionate to the value of the person in relation to one's own happiness. So it makes sense, Rand would say, that like you help your loved ones more than you would help an anonymous stranger. Okay? That you would help, again, those kind of more immediately in your life that you love, whether that be a partner, a friend, a sibling, a parent, etc. You would help them more, right, than you would potentially a stranger, right? And then again, Rand goes through a couple of examples about, to illustrate this on the altruist's favorite example, the issue of saving a drowning person, which we'll again kind of talk about on Wednesday. Okay? And then she talks about, again, what's our duty, if any, to help those, from an unchosen emergency, like an earthquake or something like that. And then she talks about those experiencing poverty, right? Should we help those and them? And at the very end, she makes the claim, she says, the moral purpose of a human's life is the achievement of his or her own happiness. This does not mean that he or she is indifferent to all other humans, that human life is of no value to him or her, and that they have no reason to help others in an emergency. But it does mean that he or she does not subordinate, bring him or herself down, his life to the welfare of others. Okay? So again, Rand's very much in, if you were to read some more of like her philosophy overall, you would see that she really is, again, kind of this promoter of like self-assertion and kind of freedom of self, freedom of individual. But in that space, we still have to ask those questions like, can we and should we act selflessly? Can we ever escape our own selfish nature? Okay? And Rand argues that first and foremost, we should be concerned with our own happiness, and we shouldn't let others, kind of for a lack of a better term, bring us down. But I'm sure that for some of us, that feels really uncomfy, right? We're like, no, we really want to help. We really want to be there for others, right? But according to her rational principle of conduct on page 103, right, we're to always act in accordance with the hierarchy of our values and never sacrifice a greater value for a lesser one. Okay? And so kind of in this space and kind of in thinking about this, I hope that it does leave you with more questions about, what motivates ethical behavior, right? What motivates kind of your own decision making when it comes to ethics? Are you motivated by what seems to be altruistic? Are you motivated by what seems to be psychologically egoist? Meaning that, again, everything that we do is motivated by our own self-interest, right? In some capacity or another. Or is there, again, kind of maybe some middle ground there that we can explore? So thank you for watching. Have a nice Monday. And be on the lookout for some more emails this week. And as always, if you need anything, feel free to reach out via email. And I will get back to you usually within 24 hours. So take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Cheers.